Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So in this chapter number 17, video number 2, we are going to discuss the phospholipid synthesis. To understand this, I am going to show a diagram to you. But first of all, you need to know that glycerol, this is the glycerol, and it has carbon number 1, 2 and 3. If the carbon number 1 is attached to a fatty acid, carbon number 2 is also attached to a fatty acid, and carbon number 3 is only attached to a phosphate, and the phosphate, this whole structure is known as a phosphatic acid. But if we remove the phosphate from here, or the structure is like this, glycerol with fatty acid, and carbon number 3 is free. So this structure will be known as a diacyl glycerol. So one thing to convert the phosphatic acid into the diacyl glycerol is that we remove the inorganic phosphate. So we come to this table of the Lippincott, which is very much easy to explain the whole mechanism. So I told you, to convert the phosphatic acid into diacyl glycerol, we have to remove the inorganic phosphate as we have removed of now. And what we do, that we are going to add a CDP alcohol, and this CDP alcohol is an activated alcohol. And whenever this will come, the diacyl glycerol will be present. A CMP will be attached to the diacyl glycerol along with the alcohol. So a glycerophospholipid will be formed. So glycerophospholipid is a structure which is, so as I was telling you, in the glycerophospholipid, what will be there, that there is this glycerol which has carbon number 1 and 2 attached with the fatty acids, and the carbon number 3 is having a CMP which is now attached to an alcohol. So CDP, it has 2 CMP. One of the CMP is released outside, but the other one is attached over here, and through which an alcohol is attached. And you know, whenever a CDP alcohol is present, or any CDP compound is present, it is an activated compound. So phosphatic acid is converted into diacyl glycerol by the removal of the inorganic phosphate. Now when this diacyl glycerol is coming in contact with the CDP alcohol, which is an activated alcohol, one CDP gets to be a part of glycerophospholipid, one CMP gets to be a part of the glycerophospholipid, other CMP is released, and now your glycerophospholipid has 3 carbons which are attached to 2 fatty acids and 1 alcohol through a CMP group. So this was the whole scenario of glycerophospholipid. Another thing that can be is phosphatic acid, which has that glycerol and 2 fatty acids and 1 phosphate group. Now if we attach a CTP to it, either we can activate this phosphatic acid to form the CDP diacyl glycerol. You know what will happen in such a situation? It will be activated as well, like we activated the alcohol. In this situation, when the CTP is added, 2 pyrophosphates are removed and the CDP diglycerol is formed. How the 2 pyrophosphates are removed? Because if we will remove both the 2 of the phosphates, the compound will become CMP. But you know, in the phosphatic acid you have glycerol, you have 2 fatty acids, but you also have another phosphate. So one phosphate is coming from CTP, other from this phosphatic acid. So a pyrophosphate is removed and a CDP diacyl glycerol is formed. Now this CDP gets attached to a normal alcohol, which can be glycerol, inositol, and a CMP is released out, because the diacyl glycerol with a CMP and an alcohol is a glycerophospholipid. I hope you understood this whole mechanism over here, that either we can activate the phosphatic acid or the diacyl glycerol by adding a CTP, or either we can activate the alcohol by the CDP attachment to it. In either the case, the end product is going to be a glycerophospholipid. Now that they tell you that this phosphatic acid, it is actually formed by glycerol, 3 phosphate and 2 fatty acids, as I told you always, and it has another phosphate group attached to it, and from this phosphatic acid we can have a triacyl glycerol to be formed from it. Simple and easy is that. Triacyl glycerol means 3 fatty acids attached to it. So actually the phosphatic acid is just glycerol, 2 fatty acids and 1 phosphate. And if we remove the phosphate and attach another fatty acid, it will become a triacyl glycerol. So glycerol plus 2 acyl groups plus 1 phosphate is a phosphatic acid, which can further be converted into a triacyl glycerol. Now, how these phosphatidylcholine and phosphatidylethanolamine are formed? They are formed very easily in the eukaryotic cell and from this mechanism. But first of all, we need to know that their sources can be different. One source is from pre-existing choline and ethanolamine, and other sources from the phosphatidylserine and phosphatidylethanolamine. So phosphatidylcholine can, in the liver, it can come from ethanolamine and phosphatidylserine, or it can come from the diet, or it can come from choline or ethanolamine, which are pre-existing. So both the situation, the thing is that it is coming from the diet or it is coming from the body's normal phospholipid turnover. Now, synthesis from pre-existing choline and ethanolamine. So, you have choline, you have ethanolamine, and what happens is that these choline and ethanolamine, they are acted upon by the kinases, and ATP is added to them and ADP is removed, and these choline and ethanolamine have now a phosphate group attached to them. Now, to further activate them, a CTP comes and it removes its CMP. So what happens in such a situation? Now this choline with the phosphate group has another phosphate group attached to it. So what it becomes? A CDP choline or a CDP ethanolamine. And this CDP choline, the CDP ethanolamine, they can enter via this chain, that is this activated form. They can remove a CMP. They can be added to the diacylglycerol, donate a CMP and attach. So it has two fatty acids, one CMP with the alcohol, and the alcohol can either be CDP choline or a CDP ethanolamine, which were activated firstly via kinases and secondly via the CTP activation. Okay. Now they talk about the significance of choline reutilization. They tell you that although the humans, the eukaryotic cells, they can synthesize choline de novo, that they can synthesize choline from its residues, remnants, the amount made is insufficient because a large amount of this choline is used, and it is a proper part of the acetylcholine, which is an excitatory neuroreceptor, which is needed for all motor functions of the body. So we need a lot of choline. Other from being synthesized in the body, we need external sources of the choline, and whenever there is deficiency of the choline, what will happen? Motor functions will not be able to perform, so muscle damage. Another is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Why is fatty liver disease present? Because of the choline deficiency. What will happen? The phosphatic acid is going to be accumulated. The phosphatic acid will not be converted into the phosphatidylcholine, and in this situation we will have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So either it can be deficiency of the acetylcholine or it can be deficiency of the choline itself, which will cause non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Now they are telling you that this phosphatidylcholine in the lung surfactant. So what happens if you have this glycerol compound, and this has carbon number 1, carbon number 2 and carbon number 3, and on this carbon number 3 your alcohol is the choline, but in the carbon number 1 and 2 you have saturated long chain fatty acid, which is a palmitate. So carbon number 1 and 2 has palmitate attached to it, that is a saturated long chain fatty acid, and carbon number 3 has this choline attached to it. So such a situation, such a thing is called dipalmitoyl phosphatidylcholine, and this dipalmitoyl, di means 2, so 2-palmitoyl acetylcholine or 2-palmitoyl phosphatidylcholine or dipalmitoyl phosphatidylcholine, it is produced by the type 2 pneumocytes which are present in our lungs, in the alveoli of the lungs, and it acts as a surfactant. Surfactant means a thing which is going to reduce the surface tension, and in the absence of the surfactant, what will happen? So for example, this is your lung and it has a layer of liquid, and this layer of liquid will prevent the friction to take place. But now what is atelectasis? Atelectasis means that this whole lungs become dry. In such a situation, it will stick together, and it will be very much difficult to inflate this lung. So such a situation is called atelectasis, lack of the surfactant. And they tell you surfactant is a mixture of the lipid 90% and protein 10%, with dipalmitoyl phosphatidylcholine being the major component of the surfactant. Now they tell you that the fetal lung maturity. How to check the lung maturity of the fetus? We do the lecithin sphingomyelin test in the amniotic fluid, and a value of less than or equal to 2 is the evidence of maturity. But if the value is going to be below this value, what it means that the person or the baby is having, the lung is not mature for the baby. Another thing that they tell you, that the dipalmitoyl phosphatidylcholine occurs in the pneumocytes at 32 weeks of gestation. The time period for its production is very much important, because all the babies that will be produced before it and they will be coming out before it, in such babies we will have the respiratory distress syndrome. So coming to the respiratory distress syndrome, which is a insufficient surfactant due to a baby being born before the normal period of the surfactant production, that is before 32 weeks of the gestation. So, in some situations it is very much difficult to stop the baby from being produced in an early period. So what we do, we can give prenatal and postnatal drugs. So prenatal, what we do is glucocorticoids are given prenatal. So if I write over here prenatal, in the prenatal glucocorticoids are given to induce the expression of genes. But what is postnatal? In the postnatal situation, we give natural or synthetic type of this dipalmitoyl phosphatidylcholine, which is then going to reduce the respiratory distress syndrome, which is then going to reduce the atelectasis. It will make it easy. It will cause a fluid to accumulate in the alveoli, or it will like smoothen out the layer, etc. Now they tell you acute respiratory distress syndrome, it can be seen in all ages. Like what happens in types of infection, injury, or aspiration. Aspiration means you can aspire your vomit or aspire water and it goes into your lungs. What happens in such a situation? Lungs are filled with water, they are filled with blood, they are filled with pus. In the infection they are filled with pus, in injury they are filled with blood, in aspiration they are filled with vomit or with water. In such a fluid accumulated lung or the alveoli, the exchange of oxygen is very faulty and carbon dioxide starts to accumulate. And what will happen in this situation? There will be respiratory distress syndrome. So now we firstly talked about phosphatidylcholine that was being produced from de novo synthesis. Now phosphatidylcholine can also be produced from phosphatidylserine. And I told you this thing of the phosphatidylcholine being produced from ethanolamine and serine, it occurs in the liver. And why the phosphatidylcholine is very much important, and why there is this extra mechanism? Because it is a major part of the phosphatidylcholine is a major part of the acetylcholine. Also this phosphatidylcholine is a major portion of the bile as a component of the plasma lipoproteins. So if there will be deficiency of the phosphatidylcholine, what will happen? All the body functions will be damaged. So we need external sources to produce or provide this phosphatidylcholine, and this is mainly done by this whole mechanism which is written over here. Now we come to this mechanism. They told you that PS is converted into PE, which is converted into PC. So what is this? I have made a mnemonic that is SEC. From serine to ethanolamine to choline. From phosphatidylserine to phosphatidylethanolamine to phosphatidylcholine. And how they are formed? First of all, to convert S to E, we have decarboxylation reaction. So to convert phosphatidylserine into phosphatidylethanolamine, we have since the decarboxylation reaction is taking place, so enzyme will be phosphatidylserine decarboxylase, removing the carbon dioxide and producing phosphatidylethanolamine. This phosphatidylethanolamine is then converted into phosphatidylcholine by methylation, and this methylation is 3 times. You can see 3 arrows over there, and the methyl group is always donated by S-adenosylmethionine, which is our SAM, and the enzyme in this reaction will be methyl transferase, because it is transferring methyl from the S-adenosylmethionine to this phosphatidylethanolamine to form the phosphatidylcholine. Since the SAM is donating 3 methyl group, so SAM becomes SAH, which is S-adenosyl homocysteine, and a phosphatidylcholine is now formed. So SEC, how it actually occurs, to convert serine compound into the ethanolamine compound, we do decarboxylation. We remove the carbon dioxide by the enzyme, that is phosphatidylserine decarboxylase. To convert ethanolamine to choline, we do the methylation, but the methylation is 3 times methylation, and the compound is SAM, which is giving these methyl groups. So simple as that. So in one portion we talked about the phosphatidylcholine being formed from pre-existing choline and ethanolamine. Now we talked about its production in the liver, from which it is formed through the phosphatidylserine through this second reaction, that is SEC, and how I taught to you through that mnemonic. I think that is the most easiest part of this. Now we have phosphatidylserine. This phosphatidylserine that was present in the liver, how it is actually formed. So let's talk about this. Phosphatidylserine synthesis in the mammalian tissue is provided by base exchange reaction. So what happens over here is that we have the phosphatidylethanolamine and we have the phosphatidylserine, and we have the enzyme named phosphatidylethanolamine. Since this enzyme is going to convert this ethanolamine into the serine, so it will be phosphatidylethanolamine serine transferase. Simple as that. And now it is going to transfer this ethanolamine to this compound. So this compound will become phosphatidylethanolamine, and this compound will become the serine compound. So that is our base exchange reaction that takes place in the formation of the phosphatidylserine. And now they tell you that this reaction is reversible, is used to produce the phosphatidylserine required for membrane synthesis. And this phosphatidylserine has a negative charge because of its major function, and this phosphatidylserine has very important role in blood clotting. So it's a clotting factor type of thing. Now we have the phosphatidylinositol. What is the inositol? When we come to this diagram over here, they always tell you that the activation of the alcohols, it occurs in choline and ethanolamine. But in case of glycerol and inositol, we have activated diacylglycerol or CDP diacylglycerol added to it. So now how will this phosphatidylinositol be formed? Simple is the mechanism. It is formed from free inositol being attached to the CDP diacylglycerol. So this free inositol, which is not activated inositol, is attached to the CDP diacylglycerol, and a CMP is removed to form the glycerophospholipid, which is known as the glycerophosphoinositol. Simple as that. So this is how the phosphatidylinositol or glycerophosphoinositol is formed. The CDP DAG, the CDP diacylglycerol, and free inositol are its major reactions or major starting products. Now phosphatidylinositol is an unusual phospholipid, and it contains stearic acid on carbon number 1 and arachidonic acid on carbon number 2. So it has, on the carbon number 1 it has stearic acid, carbon number 2 has arachidonic acid. Also it has a negative charge. There is an asymmetry in the phospholipid composition of the cell membrane, that is phosphatidylserine and phosphatidylinositol are found on the inner leaflet. The asymmetry is achieved by ATP dependent enzymes, which are flipases or fliposes. So you always read whenever you are starting your biology that your cell membrane is a asymmetrical compound, and this asymmetry is brought about by the enzyme, the fliposes or flipases, which are ATP dependent and which tend to throw these phosphatidylserine and phosphatidylinositol on the inside or the intracellular portion of the cell membrane, and this is how your phosphatidylinositol goes to an interior of your phospholipid bilayer. Now this phosphatidylinositol is very much important because it is used for signal transduction across the cell membrane. Now this whole mechanism is explained by the figure 17.7. Let me move on to that. So there can be a hormone there can be a neurotransmitter, there can be a growth factor, and it attaches to this receptor, which is a G protein coupled receptor. And now whenever the hormone, the neurotransmitter, the growth factor is attached to this receptor, that is the G protein, I can write it over here, GPCR, that is G protein dependent receptor, what will happen, that now a GTP will be attached to it. This GTP is going to separate the beta and gamma groups. The receptor will become activated. Now this activated receptor binds to phospholipase C, and this phospholipase C, this whole compound, it is known as a GQ protein, and this GQ protein has beta and gamma attached to it, which are actually its inhibiting factors. Whenever the GQ subunit, the GQ protein, dissociates from the beta and gamma, and it becomes only the alpha subunit. So this alpha subunit of the GQ protein along with the GTP attached to it activates the phospholipase C. This activated phospholipase C either goes to the diacylglycerol or either goes to this special compound which is known as a PIP2, that is phosphatidyl inositol with 2 phosphates attached to it. So it is going to break this PIP2 into inositol 1,4,5 triphosphate, IP3, and second one is a diacylglycerol. So whenever this phospholipase C will be activated by the alpha subunit of the GQ protein, it is going to convert this PIP2 into diacylglycerol and IP3 or inositol triphosphate. Now this diacylglycerol activates the protein kinase C through direct reaction, or the inositol for triphosphate or IP3 goes into the cell membrane or the endoplasmic reticulum, causes the calcium channels to open, the calcium is released, and this calcium activates the protein kinase C. So this phospholipase actually makes a dual activation for the protein kinase C, one through the diacylglycerol by direct, or other by the inositol triphosphate, which activates the calcium channel and in turn activates the protein kinase C. This protein kinase C is going to do the phosphorylation of the proteins and produce intracellular effect. Catalyzes phosphorylation of the cellular proteins that mediate cellular response to that particular hormone. So that hormone initiated this second messenger response system, or the breakdown of this PIP2 into diacylglycerol and inositol triphosphate to activate this protein kinase C to do the phosphorylation, and this phosphorylation then does the intracellular effects. So that was the whole role of the phosphatidyl inositol and its compound PIP2 in the whole signal transduction process across the cell membrane to actually produce phosphorylation and to produce the reaction called the intracellular effects. Now the phosphatidyl inositol has a second role, which is role in membrane protein anchoring. What happens is, specific proteins can be attached through a carbohydrate bond to the phosphatidyl inositol. So I have made this diagram that phosphatidyl inositol has certain proteins attached to it via this carbohydrate bridge. For example, a lipoprotein lipase, which is an enzyme which is going to degrade the triacylglycerol, is attached to the capillary endothelial cells by glycerol phosphatidyl inositol or GPI anchor. So lipoprotein lipase, so this is a lipoprotein lipase, for example, and it is attached to the cell membrane by the means of this GPI protein, and this GPI is actually, what is this GPI? This is a glycerol phosphoinositol anchor, and this glycerol phosphatidyl inositol anchor attaches this lipoprotein lipase, which is an enzyme which degrades the triacylglycerol, to the cell membrane. So attachment of this compound, which is a lipoprotein lipase, to the cell membrane is brought about by the phosphatidyl inositol. It can also be found in parasitic protozoans such as trypanosomes, leishmania. Being attached to a membrane lipid, what happens? Allows the GPI anchor proteins to have increased lateral mobility, and their proteins can be cleaved from its anchor by the action of the phospholipase C. So what happens that this protein, this is an anchor and this is the protein, and protein can be removed from its anchor by the phospholipase C, and this is the cleavage site, and this cleavage is brought about by the phospholipase C. Now they tell you that a deficiency of the synthetic GPIs or the anchors, what will happen in such a deficiency, that there will be hemolytic diseases. The hemolytic disease, paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria in the hematopoietic cells, because now the lipases or the proteins, they cannot be attached to the cell membrane, and there will be hemoglobinuria. Some of the GPI anchored protein protect the blood cells from the immune system. For example, what happens is, for example, this is our cell membrane and this is the anchor, and anchor attaches a certain protein to the cell membrane. Now they tell you what happens is that if this anchor is not present and the protein is present like without an anchor, protein is present like this, so this protein will be considered an outside protein and our body's immune cells will attack on this protein from all the sides. But now if this protein is anchored by the GPI anchor, what will happen? Now this protein will be considered a part of our body and the immune cells will not attack this protein. So this is our protection mechanism that is provided to our body proteins or the self proteins. Now phosphatidylglycerol and cardiolipin. Now for a further revision, so the phosphatidylcholine could be made in the liver by phosphatidylethanolamine and phosphatidylserine, or it can be made from serine and from the choline and ethanolamine. From choline and ethanolamine, the reaction was this, but from the phosphatidylethanolamine and phosphatidylserine, the reaction was related to SEC mnemonic. For our phosphatidylserine synthesis, we use the mechanism base exchange. For our phosphatidylinositol, we use the mechanism that was associated with this, but in such a situation, the diacylglycerol was activated and the inositol was a free inositol. And this inositol, the phosphatidylinositol, was very important because it was a part of the messenger system and it was a part of anchoring system. So messenger and anchoring system, this was a portion of the phosphatidylinositol. Now we talk about phosphatidylglycerol and cardiolipin. Now phosphatidylglycerol is found in large compositions in mitochondrial membranes and is a precursor of the cardiolipin. Now this phosphatidylglycerol is synthesized from CDP diacylglycerol and glycerol 3-phosphate. Simple is that this is this CDP diacylglycerol, and when we attach a glycerol 3-phosphate to it, we will get a compound which is known as a diphosphatidylglycerol. It means a glycerol over here, 2 fatty acids over here, a phosphate group over here, and a glycerol then attached to it over here. So this whole compound is a diphosphatidylglycerol. Now this cardiolipin is synthesized by the transfer of the diacylglycerol 3-phosphate from the CDP DAG. So when I was talking to you about cardiolipin, I told you that it has this 2 phosphatic acids which are attached to each other. Now they tell you that if you have DAG 3-phosphate and you attach a CDP DAG to it, what will be the remaining compound? The remaining compound will be a cardiolipin. The resulting compound will be a cardiolipin. So DAG 3-phosphate, it actually means a phosphate group that is attached to 3rd carbon of the diacylglycerol, and along with it you attach a CDP DAG to it on an activated diacylglycerol, the compound will be a cardiolipin. Simple as that. Now we have the sphingomyelin. I told you sphingomyelin is a sphingosine based phospholipid, and it is found in the component of the cell membrane, the myelin sheath, etc. So when we were talking about the whole structure of the sphingomyelin, I told you there is a ceramide and then there is a alcohol attached to it. So firstly we will form a ceramide, and then we will attach the alcohol to it, and the compound will be a sphingomyelin. To form a ceramide, we're going to attach palmitoyl coenzyme A with the serine. The coenzyme A will be released, carbon dioxide will be released, a hydrogen will be added to it in the presence of this PLP, which is a derivative of the vitamin B6. Now what happens, that the sphinganine compound is formed. So palmitoyl plus serine makes sphinganine. Now this sphinganine undergoes FAD, comes to it, removes the H that was added in this reaction. So what will be formed? FADH2 will be formed. The coenzyme A will be released. From where? Fatty acyl coenzyme A. So palmitoyl coenzyme A and serine, they formed a sphinganine by removal of coenzyme A, by removal of carbon dioxide in the presence of PLP, and absorbing a hydrogen atom. Now we are going to remove the hydrogen atom. So we removed the hydrogen atom through FAD, and we added a fatty acid group, which was a fatty acyl coenzyme A, and the coenzyme A was removed in this situation. Now the resulting compound will be a sphingosine. So from the sphinganine we get the sphingosine, and from the sphingosine, or this whole reaction can also be known as a ceramide. Why it is known as a ceramide? Because I told you, when there is this sphingosine with two fatty acids attached to it, it becomes a ceramide. And on its carbon number 1, when you further attach alcohol group, such a situation, your sphingomyelin is produced. So when you have ceramide, you will attach phosphatidylcholine to it. The phosphatidylcholine will donate its phosphorylcholine to it. Diacylglycerol will be removed. It means that the phosphatidylcholine donated its choline compound, and the remaining diacylglycerol was removed. The ceramide became the sphingomyelin, and this was the phosphorylcholine side chain. Simple as that. Palmitoyl and serine forms sphinganine. The sphinganine gets converted into ceramide. Ceramide has phosphatidylcholine donating its phosphorylcholine to it. That is, phosphorylcholine actually means choline with a phosphate group. So this phosphorylcholine being attached to this ceramide produces sphingomyelin. The whole reaction is explained over here, but for we have now become expert in the sphingomyelin thing. So we know that whenever there is serine plus palmitoyl coenzyme A, we will remove the coenzyme A, we will remove the carbon dioxide, we will attach the PLP, we will absorb some hydrogens, and we will form the sphinganine. Now this sphinganine will be converted into ceramide, and the ceramide will be converted into the sphingomyelin. Now how the sphinganine is converted into ceramide? By removing by removing the hydrogen through the FAD by producing FADH2. Other thing that we do is the fatty acyl coenzyme A gets attached and coenzyme A gets removed. So fatty acids are attached to it, ceramide is formed. Now for the sphingomyelin production, we attach the phosphatidylcholine, which gives its choline compound, which gives a phosphorylcholine or phosphated choline to it, and the remaining compound produced is diacylglycerol, which is the byproduct, and the main product is sphingomyelin. Now this phosphorylcholine, which is coming from the phosphatidylcholine, is transferred to the ceramide, producing the sphingomyelin and a DAG. DAG is a byproduct, sphingomyelin is our main product. Now sphingomyelin of the myelin sheath is very important because it contains long chain fatty acids such as lignoceric acid and nervonic acid, whereas grey matter of the brain has sphingomyelin that contains stearic acid. So myelin sheath has lignoceric and nervonic, whereas our brain has stearic acid. Now they tell you that ceramides, which was this compound without a phosphorylcholine, they maintain our skin water permeability barrier. So if you are going to apply a lot of ceramides to your skin will become plump and healthy. But whenever there's decreased ceramide levels, what will happen? Your skin will be diseased, your skin will be dry, the skin water barrier will not be maintained. So this is how we discuss our phospholipid, mainly the glycerophospholipid synthesis. In the next video, we are going to discuss the phospholipid degradation, which is going to be a small video, inshallah.